You know, those songs remind me of every morning worship at school when I was teaching, as we would have our worship and sing songs just like these back in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, and even 2000s. But you know what? It's a great thing to be in the house of the Lord with you this morning. And I thank you so much for inviting me, Pastor Heiss, to speak this morning, because education is a thing of my heart and my life. I just figured it out. I've been in Adventist education since I started first grade in 1961 for 59 years now that I've been involved with Adventist education one way or another. And you can't beat it. I'll tell you what, it is a positive thing. But you know, there's a lot of things that I want to share with you this morning, but first I want to have a word of prayer. Father God, thank you so much for who you are and what you've done for us. And as we come to you this morning to worship in your house, may you fill our lives with love and compassion. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. So how many of you remember a teacher that impacted your life somewhere or another? All right, amen. And, you know, that teacher may have made a big difference in your life. I think my sophomore year in high school was probably one of the big changes that I had when Mr. Ken Wilson, just fresh out of Andrews University, came down to be our teacher in Bible class. And he is the one who got me started on doing what we called action teams back there, going out and doing ministry. And he got me involved with studying my Bible in a better way. He first introduced me to the New Word Bible. And some of these different type of modern translations, as I read and studied, we had Vespers on Friday nights together, and we had our action team, which we called Koinonia. Still remember those things. And all of these type of things, he had a great impact on my life. You know, he was not that much older than I was, probably about 12 years older than I was. But he got Lou Gehrig's disease, and after a bout with that, just a few years ago, he passed away. But I happened to be there. He was unmarried when he came to us, and I was on an action team with him down in southern Kansas. We'd gone from Nebraska down there, and I was there the day that he met the lady that was going to be his wife. And Joyce was just a wonderful lady, and I saw her at the last general conference, and we gave each other big hugs as we talked about Ken and the impact he had had on our lives, both mine and hers. I'm sure you have teacher stories that you can tell as well. But you know, teachers are called upon to do much more than just pass on information. Isn't that true? Yes. A good teacher, Bill Clinton said in August 5 of 1993, a good teacher inspires a thirst for learning that lasts a lifetime. How many of you have quit learning? Amen. Because we're going to learn throughout eternity, aren't we? There's never going to be a time when we're going to quit learning, and this mind of ours is going to hold all of that. Henry Brooks Adams said, teachers affect eternity. They can never know the full range of their influence. I have teachers in the conference that were students of mine. They're gone now. I have pastors in the conference that were students of mine. I don't know what it's going to go on as I look throughout the lives of those kids that I've had starting 42 years ago when I first started teaching. But you know, good teachers see potential and they inspire potential in their students. They make achievers out of ordinary people. You think that that's such an honorable profession, given the changing of the shaping of minds that they have all the time, that of these young people that are going to be our future leaders, the profession that teaches and trains all other professions would receive compensation equal to what their responsibility is, right? But just look at the world today. It's turned upside down. You know, look at our culture. We reward those athletes that can kick and throw and run, or shoot a hockey puck, or throw a basket, or swim faster than others, much more than we do our teachers. We almost revere the actors and actresses as they get on that stage each day and just entertain us much more than we did for our teachers. But you know, Tom Brokaw reminded us, he says, it's easy to make a buck, but it's much harder to make a difference. And so because you are drastically underpaid and continually underappreciated, this dedication today is for you. Teachers, educators. You know, I was thinking how difficult but rewarding it is to be a teacher today. So one reason that we are dedicating you today is because your professional efforts truly affect the fate of the world. And more specifically, the lives of individual young people as you meet with them every day. You possess the ability to shape, to mold their minds, to create their mindsets, to encourage their attitudes, and to widen their perspectives of what the world is. There have been teachers who have had great and profound impacts over different places in the world, some over the whole world. Some of these people you will probably recognize, maybe some you won't. But one or two are the ones that you really can relate to. Let's think of a teacher in China many years ago by the name of Confucius. He was born in the Chinese state of Lu, and he began teaching when he was 20 years old. By the way, that's how old I was when I started teaching. Then I went back to college and finished up. His theories and principles were spread throughout China, and people learned from his wise sayings. You may have heard of them. For example, they must often change who would be constant in happiness or wisdom. And another one is, it is not possible for one to teach others who cannot teach his own family. And a third one, the one who knows right principles is not equal to the one who loves them. No, these Chinese proverbs many have heard throughout the world and take them to heart, and they can all be traced back to this man, Confucius. He was a teacher as well as a wise man. Then there was another man in 1589 by the name of Galileo. He became a professor of mathematics at Pisa. Now, when you think of Pisa, what do you think of? That's right, you think of the Leaning Tower. That's what everybody thinks of. But Galileo was there, and he was the one who proved that when you drop two objects, one light and one heavy, they will fall down and hit the ground at the same time. And the heavier one does not fall faster than the light one. But in 1609, Galileo used his skills to improve the spyglass, and he invented the telescope. With that telescope, he began to study the heavens, and he was the first person to study the face of the moon through a telescope. But you know, as he continued studying here with the moon and Venus and Saturn and all the different planets and the sun, he began to realize that Copernicus's theory that the Earth and all the other planets revolved around the sun and not the other way around, as everybody believed at that time. And this observation shook the church at that time. So much so because they believed that the earth and its humanity was the center of all God's creation, that everything rotated around our earth. And so the church called Galileo a heresy, a heretic. And he was sentenced and had a trial, and he went to jail for life. But you know, he was an old man, and so after a while, they let him out, but they kept him under house arrest, and he was sentenced there for the rest of his life, and now 9 years later, he passed away. But you know, Galileo's contribution to humanity was more than just his discoveries. His persistence in the truth inspired people in the face of adversity and in the personal costs that it might cost them in their own life. He was a teacher that had strong convictions. And then we have Sir Isaac Newton. Now, he was the inventor of the fig Newton, right? No, he wasn't. He was the father of the laws of motion and of gravity that are fundamental to the later inventions of flight and space travel. And he saw beyond what people see to other things. He was a teacher that possessed great vision. And then all of you know Albert Einstein. A professor in many outstanding institutions, first in Prague, and then Zurich, Berlin, and finally in the U.S. in Princeton. He was the winner of the Nobel Peace Prize, and it took great effort for him in his communication to bring his verbiage down to the average person so they could understand it. He had to stoop low to help others understand what was just basic for him. But you know, he was a teacher who was willing to humble himself for others. Then there's a lady by the name of Amy Rand. She was a brilliant teacher who made her mark in the world. In fact, by the age of 7, she was writing novels and screenplays. And in 1949, she became a full-time writer and lecturer at first Yale, then Princeton and Columbia, the University of Wisconsin, Johns Hopkins University, Harvard, or Harvard if you are from over there, and Cambridge. Impressive display at all different places as she moved from place to place doing her teaching. She was very able to communicate effectively. She was very much passion and clarity so that everybody understood her. So as we list the examples of who have made an impact upon the world today, we can't overlook the one. The one who I believe stands as the greatest teacher of all time. Who is that? That's Jesus. That's right. In fact, he is referred to as the master teacher. He was the master of the object lessons. Think about the different things that he used for object lessons, about the fig tree and the mustard seed and the moving of the mountain and spitting in the dirt with his saliva and putting on the man's eyes, all these different object lessons, and even the turning his first miracle when he changed water into wine. All these things were object lessons that people were interested in. And he was the master of communication. He could be heard talking on a flat place. And one day he was in this flat place and more people wanted to hear him. So he told a man by the name of Peter, "Can I speak from your boat?" And he went out there and said, "Push it out just a little bit because the people are crowded too close and I need to be heard." My wife and I, a few years ago, were at that exact spot. And we went up into the side of the mountain and stood way up there. And the whole side of the mountain is kind of like a voice chamber. It's very interesting. There were fishermen down there in the water. And as they were talking to each other, 200 yards up the hill, we could hear plainly what they were saying. And this is where Jesus was teaching the people. But it was not just in the flat places of the lake, but it's also up on high. On the Mount Up, it's called, is a high place where he did his longest sermon. That's where our text comes for today from Matthew 5, verses 1 and 2. And I appreciate you reading that, Pastor Heiss, as we started this morning. As you look at it in your textbook for today. Now when he saw the crowds, he went up on the mountainside and sat down. His disciples came to them, and he began to teach them. This is an instance where it talks about Jesus specifically teaching. And as we learned in Sabbath school class today, this was the longest sermon or dissertation that's recorded in the Bible that Jesus said. It's called the Sermon on the Mount. But while he was up there, everybody could hear him. He was able to project his voice out to them and to say the things that made them be able to understand the Bible, the Torah, in a different manner. No longer the eye for an eye, but love one another. Now, when he opened his mouth and he taught them, he was clear to those who had the ears to hear. And when it was vital, he made it easy for them to understand. And not only the adults and the educated listened to him, but the children as well. And he was also the master of surprise. He liked to keep everybody awake and engaged there. You know, teaching can sometimes be a challenge for our children. For example, a teacher in the middle of a lecture might notice a child sleeping and tell his buddy next door, "Billy, wake up your neighbor." Which Billy might say, "You put him to sleep, you wake him up." Or another boy might fall asleep and the teacher raises her voice and says, "Derek, you can't sleep in my class." And Derek responds that, well, if you wouldn't talk so loud, maybe I could. Something like that. But we don't have any record of anybody falling asleep when Jesus was talking. No, his lessons were never boring. You didn't have somebody waking up their neighbors and, oh man, you missed it. What I missed? Oh, Jesus took a little boy's Happy Meal and he spread it out and 5,000 people, everybody was awake and saw that. And then he was also the master of inspiration. Jesus understood that the important lessons were going to come out of his life, not out of some book. There is a saying that says, this from education, children learn more from who you are than from what you teach. Very important. There was an illustration of a pastor who was building a deck. And every day as he worked, this little neighbor boy came by and watched him intently. And after several days, the pastor behind me asked the little boy, says, are you watching me to learn how to build a deck? The boy says, no, I'm watching you to see what words come out of your mouth when you hit your thumb. Well, the mediocre teacher tells. The good teacher explains. The great teacher demonstrates. But the best teachers inspire. They realize that people are watching them all the time. It's the moments when they think that they're not being looked at, that's when people catch the most of them from what they see. Maria Shelley wrote a poem, When I Thought You Wasn't Looking. When you thought I wasn't looking, sorry. When you thought I wasn't looking, I saw you hang my first picture on the refrigerator, and I wanted to paint another one. When you thought I wasn't looking, I saw you feed a stray cat, and I thought it was a good idea to be kind to animals. When you thought it wasn't looking, I saw you make my favorite cake for me, and I knew that little things are special things. When you thought I wasn't looking, I heard you pray. And I believed that there was a God to talk to. And when you thought I wasn't looking, I felt you kiss me goodnight, and I felt loved. When you thought I wasn't looking, I saw tears in your eyes. And I learned that sometimes things hurt, and it's all right to cry. When you thought I wasn't looking, I saw that you cared. And when I wanted to be, then I wanted to be everything that I could be. When you thought I wasn't looking, I looked. And I wanted to say thanks for all the things I saw when you thought I wasn't looking. Jesus knew that people were watching him all the time. One day, some religious leaders tried to put him to this test. There was a woman, remember, that was caught in adultery? The religious leaders surrounded her. They were about to give her a failing grade. With rocks in her hands, they were going to give her an F. But Jesus knew a thing or two about object lessons himself. So he knelt down and began to write in the dirt or the sand. He wrote some things, and this became a powerful lesson because all of them dropped their stones. And he said, let the one who has no sin throw it with the first rock. He didn't lower the bar for them. This is okay. We can all pass. He didn't let the woman get away with it, though. Jesus used this moment as a teachable moment for her as well. Where are your accusers, he finally said. And then, neither do I condemn you. So now it's time for a retest. Mary is going to get tested again. And he says to her, go and sin no more. There's an educational organization called Chalkboard that is a proponent of the SOLs today. That's Standard of Learning. But the idea of that SOL, Standard of Learning, is to raise the bar, to bring every child along. And they coined a phrase called No Child Left Behind. But Dr. Bishop was full of passion for this. And he was committed to embracing those who are at risk of slipping through the cracks every day. So we applaud the commitment and yours as a teacher to raise the bar. So in the closing moments here, I'm going to talk about raising the bar and the SOLs. Because Jesus shared the desire of this group that no child should be left behind. But he had a different SOL. His SOL was the standard of living. This woman that was caught in adultery, Jesus raised the bar. He lifted her SOL grade, her standard of living grade. He said, you can do it with my help, with my effort, with my involvement. Now go and live it. Move to a higher level. Great teachers raise the bar. Then they lift others up so they can see what it looks like from the other side. Inspires them to want to do what they see. So we've talked about what it takes to make a great teacher. But you know, their students get it when they're a great teacher. A teacher who teaches but has no one learning is simply making noise. So it's Jesus' desire that no child be left behind. For God so loved the world that what? That no one should perish. No one should get an F. An F is perishing. That's failing the test. Jesus wants everyone to get it. He loves us so much that he came down and took our F on himself. And so that we can live and that we will not be left behind. He paid the price for our failure. He took that failing grade upon himself. I think that one of the hardest parts about being a teacher is sometimes the kids just don't get it. But you know, Jesus understood that part as well. Let's look at Jesus' students. What's another name for his students? Disciples. Okay? There were two brothers that were always fighting each other. One of the biggest arguments they ever had was who's going to be the greatest, you or me. And the other heard about it, and they started arguing too. Then one of them sold him out. One of them doubted him. One of them pushed the children. You know, they all pushed the children away when they tried to come to him. One was an IRS agent, okay, tax collector. They all swore that they would stay with him, but when they needed him most, when he needed them most, they all deserted him. When he told them to stay awake and pray, they fell asleep. When he told them to sleep one day on the boat, they all were awake in fear, and he finally had to get up and calm the storm. One of them cut off a man's ear. Where in the world did he get these guys? Did he go to a place called Disciples R Us and pick them up? No, these guys were his prize students. Sound familiar? The minds and hearts he was shaping to change the world. They themselves were sometimes lost and confused. They were lost and helpless like sheep without a shepherd. But Jesus offered his teachings, his patience, himself to them. Jesus taught them an SOL that they would never reach without his help. He set the standard. Live to please God. So he gave grace. He gave us the power to live at the higher level. He offered forgiveness, especially when we fail. And he does it all with love through the entire process. So teachers, students, no matter what your occupation is, your career, your station in life, he wants us all to get it. He gave us all. He gave us his all to teach us that he is the way. He is the truth. He is the life. And the only way to God the Father is through him. And he wants no student to be left behind. That's why we want to dedicate all the teachers here today for this new year of education for your students. Each one of you has the responsibility of living your life in front of your students as an emissary for Christ. This time, I want all that are teaching to come to the front of the church, so that we can have a special prayer to dedicate you. Don't wait, stand up and come. Dedicate you to Christ as his representative for the ministry that you have for him this year. I don't care whether you're a teacher in an Adventist school, SBCS, SBA, SD, Capital Crestview, a teacher working in another public or Christian school, or whether you're a home teacher. I want all teachers please to come forward. And then I also want to invite the church elders please to come up and stand behind them to be able to place their hands upon them. So all the church elders please come forward. Crowd together, teachers, so that you can have somebody touching you there. And then I want to let you know how much we appreciate what you're doing as we dedicate you this year for what you're going to be doing. After we've had the dedication prayer, Diane and her crew have a special gift that they want to give you. So after we have this prayer, I would ask that you please stay there till after she's done with that. And then at that time, we will dismiss you all back to your places and everybody can go. Let's bow our heads. Father God, you are love. You are special. And Jesus is our teacher in every way. Help us to emulate his life today and throughout this school year. As we dedicate each one of these teachers to you, we ask that you give them a special measure of the Holy Spirit to lift them up so they can meet the challenges of the day-by-day activities in the classroom, that they might inspire young people to lift the bar of the SOLs that they have, so that they might be able to see you in a new light. They might determine from what they have learned that they can share it with others. That they might remember each one of these as a favorite teacher, one who has given them the chance to know God, one that has given them insights in how to live in this world, but more importantly, insights and the faith to live in the world to come. So, Father, thank you so much for the dedication of each of these people as they have come to you to teach. And we ask now that you send His Holy Spirit on them. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Amen. Okay, please stay there, and Diane's going to come across and share some things with you. What? Yeah, the elders can be dispersed, go down and get pictures of all the teachers.